Inside Hilltopper Athletics is brought to you by Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration. Here's your host, Lynn.
Welcome to Inside Hilltopper Athletics Edition 8. 8 weeks already in. All smiles today, obviously, after a thrilling win. But before you even comment on that, we've got complaints from our producer, Teresa Gretchen, and myself. You give us cardiac arrest on every one of these wins. She's even texting me during the game saying she can't stand to watch.
Well, there's probably a lot of people like that, but if you look at how crazy our conference is, it's probably going to be like that every week. Everybody's so evenly matched, and it comes down to turnovers and making plays and who's going to make the most plays, and we made one more play than them, and believe me, I've been on the other side of that not making enough plays. So, no, the bottom line is to win the games, and, coaches' expectations, we know they're going to be close. We know we got to get a series of turnovers and capitalize on the turnovers to make big score games, and if you look at every game in the conference, that's what's happened, is that defenses will be able to score or provide turnovers, and that's been differences in the games.
Yes, and again, I'm Lynn. I'm the Director of Athletics here at West Liberty University, joined by our head football coach, Roger Waialae. The game we're referencing traveled to Fairmont last Thursday, up 21-0, 21 third quarter points. Fairmont rallies, scores 21 consecutive in the fourth, puts the game in overtime. West Liberty pulls out a thrilling 27-21 win. Coach, let's talk a little bit more in depth about the game. Continue with your thoughts.
Yeah, well, when we were, we scored off of turnovers and we were able to get what we wanted. We created turnovers. We had Coach Miller thought we could get a field goal block, and he put in a special block where normally we leave our defense out there. We put in a special unit, and they blocked the, Delano got his second block PAT or field goal of the year. And so, it's kind of like everything was that we planned were coming to fruition. They tried the quarterback sneak. As soon as it snapped the ball, I saw the ball on the ground, and I'm yelling. And we came out of the pile with it and had a big return. But our defense bent but didn't break at times. And then, offensively, we kept them on the field. You're going to ask me my second guessing myself. Maybe I went into 4-minute offense a little bit too early, trying to run time off the clock. I think we started on our last possession of the third quarter once we were up 21-0. Maybe I should have left the offense in the flow that they were in, coming off 3 consecutive scores. And, all we were trying to do was get out of there with a win. And fortunately enough, offensively, we kept enough in our hip pocket to run it during overtime. And it worked. The play calling in overtime was phenomenal, and we got an easy score.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about the overtime. Fairmont you won the toss, deferred.
Right.
Fairmont takes the ball. We hold them.
To a field goal.
Yes, they kick the field goal, so you get the ball. So what's your thought process, having the ball, field goal to tie, TD to win? What goes into that play calling?
Well, we knew we could get some advantages running the option because nobody's run it against them really for an extensive period of time. And so the way they were covering, they were susceptible to the option. And so earlier we ran it. The receiver didn't crack down on the Mike backer, and we got a minimal gain. We got to the sideline, adjusted, and just held it, and then, we came out the first play, we ran the speed option for 9 yards. Then we ran the ball, and then we hit Chris Charles on a little 3-step. We're just trying to methodically get the ball close enough so we can run option to the single receiver side again, and it walked right in.
Yeah, and interesting on that game-winning score, how long Garcia kept the ball.
Right.
Meaning he could have pitched it early, but then does the guy get tackled early? It was almost, for me, watching it in slow motion, look. Yeah. Almost
Actually,
like a basketball point guard.
Well, and I was an option quarterback my whole life. That you want to pitch it at the last possible second. And, if he would have pitched it early, maybe the corner would have had an angle. So he wanted to get the corner to commit because their end went inside to tackle. Pedroza did a good job of influencing him inside. So we had him pinned. a weak safety came up, with receiver pinned him, so we were actually optioning the corner, which is very, very unlikely. And when he came out there, that was the only guy. And, if he would have faked the pitch and turned up, he would have scored. So it worked to perfection in that situation.
It's unusual how these plays evolve and how it goes from being so nerve-wracking. We scored so easily when we got the ball, it almost made it anticlimactic. You see a game like that where one team scores 21 straight, the other team comes back, scores with less than a minute left. We're thinking this is going to go down to 4th and goal at the 1. But fortunately for my heart, we scored in 3 or 4 plays, and pulled that game out.
Yeah, and the one thing is we did challenge, after the week before, we did challenge the skill position, so to say. And I thought our skill position on both sides started stepping up and making plays because, our offense and defensive lines, especially the defensive line, had been playing so dominant throughout the year. And Cam Rice got Defensive Player of the Week, 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, a strip sack that ended into a score. That's 2 consecutive weeks. And, as a freshman, doing those things, his future is bright, but there's more that, he has left in his pocket.
Well, in the second segment, we're going to get back. We're going to talk about momentum, but I want to save that for the second segment. Let's talk game-changing plays. There was a number of them. Any come to the top of your head?
Well, first, the block field goal. Second, the quarterback sneak fumble, and then the strip sack. By then obviously, the plays that the offense ran in the overtime. But the biggest play of the game, I thought, was the strip sack that went for a score that put us up 2 scores. Yeah,
it was just, and as a lot of our games, not only on our schedule but throughout the league, just a weird year of football. Yeah. You just don't know who's going to win. The parity's there. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the second segment. What about unsung heroes? Who can you tell us that maybe doesn't show up in a stat sheet?
Well, for me, it's going to be John Brown. He plays nose guard. He gets double teamed a lot. Unbelievable as a leader, positive. And then his play, sometimes he's taking up 2 guys so other guys can make plays. And then when they single block him, he does make plays. And so, for me, he's graded out in the 90 percentile every game. And, he's probably one of the unsung heroes for the whole year that you never really see. But what he does allows other players to make plays.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I've always respected about football. Of course, I coached a sport where there's 5 people on one team on a court. Football, there's 11, and guys can get lost in the shuffle.
Correct.
We also talk in football that as a coach, you got to get 11 guys to do something right on a play.
Right.
Where in basketball, sometimes we can run isolations, and one guy can dictate a game at times. So that's one of the things that I love about football, but I've always been kind of a champion of the unsung people. You don't sometimes think about the center,
right,
or the nose tackle that's drawing a double every time. Mm-hmm. The fullback, back in a football era where the fullback played all the time, might carry the ball 3 times a game,
or might never carry 3 times a season.
Yes,
in this day and age,
plays a vital role. So good to know. Tuesday morning quarterback. You talked about maybe taking your foot off the gas a touch early. Anything else that?
No, there was no major decisions other when to get into 4-minute offense, and we were a little aggressive coming out after they tied it up. But I got confidence in our kicking game. I thought we could get at least get them a shot to. In that time, we practiced that every week. Just to get them a field goal in that situation. And we had 2 timeouts left. So, no, the biggest thing is that, maybe that I would question myself on is getting into 4-minute offense.
And from a fan's perspective, I'm guessing there's a sweet spot. You can't take your foot completely off the gas, because then you're going to start facing 3 and outs and then the other team. And it's football. A team scores once, we all start to panic. They score twice. Now we're in a complete panic. But is there a sweet spot? And again, I'm talking from a fan standpoint. So I'm up there in the press box. What about when you snap the ball? When would you make a conscious decision to say, we're going to, although you hardly ever huddle, but we're not going to line up until 12 seconds left and snap it with 4 or 5. When does that become a conscious part of what you're doing?
Well, I did it, early in the fourth quarter, just because if you look at it, if you can take, 40, 40, and 40, that's, 2 minutes off the clock at a time, you get a first down, then that's another 2 minutes. That's what I was looking at doing, is trying to get 4 minutes off the clock in each possession, and then the game's over. They don't have enough time to score, or they got to recover onside kicks. That's all played into my decision, and, even you can do it without running the football the whole time. We went with some safe passes, and we misread 2 of them. If we read them the right way, the clock's still going. We're not in overtime. So, I think we want to snap the ball with us because we are no huddle and because we allow the quarterbacks to check. We want to get them to the line of scrimmage at least with 10 seconds left. And then the ball needs to be snapped between 4 and 0.
All right, last thing for this segment. We talked last week about the prep that you do when you're playing a Thursday night game. Walk us through a little bit following a Thursday night game, where now you don't play until the following Saturday. How does that change your week?
Well, we came out and we practiced. Friday we came back, we lifted, we reviewed the tape. Saturday we gave them off. We came back Sunday and lifted again, then went out and practiced, and it was focused really on special teams and walkthrough. We're kind of beat up right now, so we need to get our legs, and we can't beat on them all week. And so it was more of a special teams run through and then a walkthrough with our team periods, offense and defensively. And then they had Monday off again because, the Saturday off counted for the previous week, and now we're on a Saturday schedule, so we gave them Monday off again and really we're just trying to get their legs back under them, playing 2 games in 12 days or whatever it is. So that was our philosophy behind it. Is now we're already in shape. If we're worried about being in shape now, we're in trouble. And so it's really just trying to get healthy and making sure that on Saturday we're ready to go.
And getting back into the old football, basketball discussion, an advantage of my sport is I think players like practice. Mm-hmm. Especially if you're in systems, and I think our men and women's are like that, and my teams where we do a lot of 5-on-5. Who doesn't like to play basketball?
Right.
But I'm not so sure if I was a football player and I had to go out there and hit people on a daily basis that practice is quite as fun. So if I'm a player, I think I like the short week Thursday and then the long week the following Saturday because I actually get days off. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. And the big thing is the constant pounding. I mean, our philosophy, too, in camp, and we try to teach our players in camp, is that we need to practice as fast as we possibly can without beating on each other. We want our lines to go through their step, and then, it's hard to tackle the whole time during practice. It's not like, when I played, everything was full go, quarterback live, and go. And with the size and the speed, you're going to lose players during practice, and that's one thing that we haven't done, and I think it's because we've controlled it somewhat with the pounding on the players, and especially up front with the line. You want them to go in there not feeling aches and pains on Saturdays. And the reality of it is everybody's going to have something that's bumped or bruised at this time of the year. But to practice and get the timing of things is probably the most important thing. If you got to teach somebody to play physical by now, they're not going to be playing.
Yep, good point. All right, well, that wraps up our first segment, and we got to take a break, but we'll be back, and we'll talk a little bit about our next opponent.
The Panhandle Difference.
It was a really easy process getting started with them, and then bam, it just took off. We've had a lot of gatherings here. We've had a whole basketball team. We've had lots of family dinners, birthday parties. I mean, I can't wait for holidays to come. It's a great kitchen. Honestly, it couldn't have turned out any better.
Inside Hilltopper Athletics is brought to you by Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration. Here's your host, Lynn.
Welcome back to our second segment here. Is big week, homecoming, playing what has turned out to be quite a rivalry in its short existence. Thoughts on homecoming and Wheeling University?
Well, there's so many, anytime you play homecoming, there's so many different distractions that happen during the week. Last night was serenades and our players get involved with the on-campus stuff also. And then, later on in the week, there'll be a pep rally. So there's a few things that will take their mind off football. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. It all depends how you handle it mentally. But, our team is so focused on trying to be 1-0 this week. I don't think any of the distractions will affect us, and they understand the craziness of the conference, that every week you're going to face a good team that can beat you. It doesn't matter what their record is or where they stand in the standings, and you got to come ready to play. Added into that is the rivalry game, and rivalry games are that for a reason. And you could come out on the good end and you're good for the rest of the year, and it's one of the games they circle, we circle, everybody circles as the big game of the year.
If you had your preference, would you want to play a rivalry game on homecoming or save a rivalry game where there's less festivities and distractions and maybe have the rivalry as a standalone game?
I never quite thought about it, but thinking about it now, I think you would want it as a standalone game, just because homecoming is going to be packed no matter what, and that game is going to be packed no matter what. So you look at a chance of getting two enormous crowds at the game.
Well, and I'll give you my thoughts on homecoming for those of you who are tuned in. If you get a chance, please come up. Fortunately for you, a warm weather guy, they're predicting 70 degrees on Saturday, so that's going to be a good thing. And I think our school does homecoming right.
Probably as good as
with
anybody.
With all the tents and the alumni that come back and the food trucks and the festivities and the things that go on Friday night and then after the game. Hats off to everybody involved in that process, because it is a great event.
Right. And
then you throw in two pretty good football teams playing a very, very important game. This has the makings of a classic. So I'm inviting everybody. Please come out if you get a chance. If not, please check us out on the stream. But this is going to be fun. Yeah,
big game. And, fortunately for coaches and even players a little bit, you want to prepare for everybody the same way. And, we haven't changed anything that we've done preparation-wise, we try to prepare every week as if we're playing in the Super Bowl. And so I think if you go in with that mentality each game, it doesn't matter.
And so let's continue. We play Wheeling. They come in. Are they tied for second right now?
Yeah, I think they're tied for second.
They've got 2 league losses.
Right.
Conference standings is crazy this week as they were last week. You have 3 teams at the top, 1 or 2 losses. You got the 2 teams that haven't found a win yet. And then of those remaining 7 teams, 6 of them all have the same record.
Right.
So, and you had mentioned this just previously, this is going to be the case every week out.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there is so much parity in this conference. So a couple important games, really, really good games. Thoughts on Concord Charleston? It was 68-60 for people that don't know that.
Well, I'll watch a little bit of game on the stream, and some things look eerily familiar from our seasons past. And, there was a bunch of turnovers, a bunch of scores, a lot of, quick scores. And when you have that, and really it came up to matchups. Neither of the defenses matched up really well to the offense. And, Charleston made an all-out effort to stop Bowie and the wide receivers and the quarterback, and played less guys in the box, and the running back ran crazy. Yeah. And so, you got to pick your poison. And it's funny because Coach Walker, the coach at Concord, and I, he was a long-time legendary coach at Martinsburg, and obviously, they had maybe 1 or 2 close games a year. And first thing he said, he goes, well, in this conference, everybody's good. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, everybody got offensive line, defensive line, skilled kids that can go at any time. He goes, every team. He goes, even the teams that haven't won the game, they got players that if you fall asleep on them, they're going to hurt you. And so I think as a conference, they should be proud of that. But on the flip side of that, the way that teams go to the playoffs, it hurts you when you have parity in your conference, because then you're going to have teams with losses, and usually 4-loss, 3-loss teams don't get into the playoffs. It kind of depends on your region. You know, I know the year we went, there was 3-loss teams that got in. It was just weird that everybody had parity. And then last year there was 1-loss teams that didn't get in. And so, you know, you got to just play each game, and how it comes out at the end, that's the way it comes out. But it's a crazy year, and we got some really good football teams in our conference that are going to be staying home come the third week of November.
Yeah, I was at home, a little under the weather this week, so I got a lot of football watching in. I had the Concord-Charleston game on live stats, and then I was watching the Wheeling-Frostburg game, which went down to the end as well.
Right. And, you know, that game came down really the biggest, you talk about big plays. The biggest play of the game was right before half when Wheeling blocks the punt and goes in the score and got the lead and kept the lead for good. And it put, you know, Frostburg, who likes to run the ball, put them in passing situations the whole game trying to play catch-up. And that's what you have to do to beat good teams. You got to put them in situations that they don't want to be in.
You know, it's amazing how many times, because I will reiterate again, this show is not scripted. I do not sit down with you and say, here's what we're going to talk about this week. I like doing it off the cuff. And you just mentioned the big play in that Wheeling-Frostburg game, blocked punt. My next thing on the segment here is special teams. All the football people say there's 3 phases of the game: offense, defense, special teams. So let's just talk special teams in general. What's the biggest challenges to having good special teams?
Well, in our division, it's the coverage teams. That's why we try everybody has gone to area kicking, meaning if your kicker can place the ball, and that's been a big advantage for us, is Justin Kaplan can kick the ball. He can squib it. He can hit line drives. He can kick it deep. But if you can pin them and narrow down the field, then it's easier to cover. And so that's what and even in our punt game, you know, my perfect punt is the one that's 40 yards out of bounds, because if you look at the analytics again, the average net punting in the Division II level is like 27 yards after return and after kick. And it's just because the timing of the long snappers and the punters. So, you know, we try to kick the ball out of bounds to the sideline. We don't want it, and that's started in camp and it goes all the way through. We don't want to see the ball return. So I think that's the hardest part, is getting your players to understand and be disciplined to run their lanes and trying to get the snap and the timing, and, you know, it all works. That's why we work on it so much. And then, you know, our goal is to make big plays in special teams, give ourselves an opportunity to score or stop them from scoring. And again, the big play I mentioned earlier was blocking the extra field goal that they attempted in the first half. That gave us an added push, I guess, for us, knowing then we're going in halftime 0-0. Yeah.
How much does culture play in the special teams?
Well, I think there's about 5 or 6 kids on our team that's all they do is play special teams, and they're really, really good at it. And we've even gone to a point where we made it part of our culture and practice, meaning, you know, we flex and then we go to special teams, and then as we're doing special teams, there's a special teams indie where we're constantly working on punt blocking for all those kids that, you know, and then we're working on a kickoff, avoiding which way to avoid, how to get off blocks. So we work that year round. One thing that we do need to get better at is the returning, and right now they'll say, returning and blocking on returns is all heart and all that. Well, there's some things we can incorporate in our individuals that will help them make it a lot easier on the retreat and on the shield blocking and all that stuff. So, but we've incorporated individuals for special teams during our kicker, punter, snapper, holder period. Is that, normally you have the guys kicking, returning, and everybody else is doing an individual for their position. Well, we've taken it to the next level, and we do individuals for each of the phases of the kicking game.
Any specific philosophy on using starters on special teams?
Yeah, we're going to use the best players. You got to put your best players out there. And then, rarely, you'll get a kid that the NFL is looking at, and the first question they ask, other than are they on track to graduate, the first football question they ask, do they play special teams? And if they don't play special teams, it's really hard because you look at the NFL with you got such limited rosters. All them guys have to play special teams, especially in their first couple years. So that's an added bonus and the incentive. If you got somebody, there's been times where we had like Kashif Walls and Brian Travis. They were begging to be on special teams, and then I'm sitting there. I said, well, they need a rest, and you're looking at it and trying to play the game. But no, we put our best players out on special teams because that emotionally. Special teams has the biggest emotional swing of every game. And you can just see the body language of Frostberg when that punt got blocked and the kid should have picked it up and scored. He jumped on it. And it was weird because they blocked it around midfield and the ball went all the way down to the goal line. And they jumped on the ball and then scored on the next play.
Yeah, special teams, there's a reason they say there's 3 phases in the game, and hopefully we can ride that out and continue to play well on special teams. For the last segment here, let's lighten it up a little bit. Let me ask you some questions about guys on the team. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm always going to put a disclaimer out when I ask the coach to answer any of these questions. You can give multiple answers if you want. Because in today's world, soon as if I would say who is the best looking, and you would say it's John, Jerry's mom's going to complain. I can't believe Coach didn't say Jerry. So there's the disclaimer. Most intense player on your team? One or two guys?
Most intense player. We have a lot of them that play really, really intense. I would have to say one of them that comes to mind would be Wimbish. If you look at the defensive side, Cam Rice, Zach Dixon, David Gilchrist, John Brown. I mean, you can just count it. We got a lot of guys that play with a lot of intensity.
Funniest guy on the team?
Caden Rice makes me laugh more than anybody else. I mean, he's constantly trying to keep things light. Right now he's injured, not practicing, and he's the loudest guy at practice, encouraging, trying to challenge guys, Sometimes it doesn't come out the right way, but in his heart I know what he's doing, and it's the right thing to do. He can't be a part of the game right now, and he's trying to.
How about football IQ? Any guys stand out?
Sam Cirksena probably has a high football IQ. He comes in a lot of practice and watches, but offensively, and they don't get enough credit, but Tyler Eli and Quentin Williams have been in our system so long. You can constantly see they know when the front's messed up and they start pointing, and there's been times in the game where they've turned around and said, hey, you might want to get out of this one. And so that tells me that they have a high IQ in learning our offense and knowing what's going on.
Who's the most athletic guy on the team?
Oh. I'd answer that one. I mean, nowadays, if you don't have athletic guys on the team that can do different things, you're kind of handcuffed. And so, I would, obviously in your skill groups, there's going to be a lot, but then, you look at Luis Martinez, who is an unbelievable shot putter, started at right tackle for 6 games for us. He was a high school tight end. He can catch the ball, and that's one of the fun part of practice is before practice watching the linemen and throwing the ball and catching the ball and going,
Last 2, fastest guy on the team. If we put them on a line and said we're either running 40 yards, 100 yards, do we have a fastest guy?
I think it comes down to 2 guys, Sean Stevens and Kadeem Richards, I think, are probably going to be the 2 fastest straight line guys that we have. But, and they play fast too, but they're, we've had players that couldn't run a 40 but played unbelievably fast. I think it comes down to, and the vice versa. We've had guys that can flat out run in track. They got track speed, but they don't have football speed. But those 2 are the ones that I think come to mind for me.
Well, there's an example. Jerry Rice never had fast 40-yard times.
Right.
But when he caught a football on a slant, he ran away from people.
Right.
Strongest guy on the team.
Oh. You have to ask Coach Hopkins that one. But Oh, let me think. Well, it's got to be one of the linemen. If you look at it, I'd have to say probably maybe Creech, maybe one of those guys that they're in the weight room all the time. That's a Coach Hopkins question. I just want football players to come out of the weight room, because there's so many times you see guys that could lift the weight room and can't play a lick. So that's one of the goals coming out of the weight room, is that our goal is to make better football players, not bodybuilders or power lifters.
Well, all right. Well, that wraps this up. We had smiles on our face this week after the thrilling win last Thursday. Let's hope we can continue this in a positive note. Come join us. Homecoming kickoff 1 o'clock. Come see us in person. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.
What are you working for? Do you want to pursue your athletic potential while earning a degree that will benefit you for a lifetime? Do you want to play at the highest level in your sport? Do you want to be a champion? That's what the 12 proud members of the Mountain East Conference are advancing toward every day, providing opportunities and pursuing excellence. The Mountain East Conference.